Today, we're going to be looking at double tops, and I'm going to give you three pieces of special sauce that are going to help you to have a higher win rate and to be able to hold your trades with more conviction. We're going to be using price action, volume, and cumulative delta. Let's take a look at the charts. Okay, so right now we're looking at TradingView, and I just want to very briefly talk about what is a double top. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. I think most of you guys know what it is. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about those three elements that I look for: the price action element, the volume element, and the delta, the cumulative delta element, that are going to make a really big difference in your overall win rate. So very quickly, of course, a double top, I think we all know what it is. Market comes up, starts to pull back down, forms its first top, pulls up again, and it's right here. This is where we are looking to make our trade. Okay, right in this, as the market does that. So there are a few things, like I said, that we're going to look at that are going to improve this win rate for us. So let's take a look at what those three things are. Okay, from a price action standpoint, what we want to do is basically two things with our price action. So number one, we want to make sure that we look far to the left. So a lot of times when we're looking at these double tops, way over here, the market may have done something, and then, a lot of price action has occurred, and then way later on, we're coming up here, and this is where our double top is forming. Okay, so in other words, a lot of times, if we look left, our double top is actually more of a triple top. Okay, but it's not a triple top like in this immediate, like super close by. If I have three touches like really close to each other, I'm not interested, okay? For a very good reason. If we think about the psychology behind that, if the market were to do something like this, here, let me actually just get rid of this for a second. If the market were to do something like this, where we get one touch, two touch, and then we come back for that third touch, and it's all happening in a relatively short amount of time, what is that telling us? That's telling us that the buyers are actually getting aggressive, right? Not a lot of time is passing before the buyers are able to bring that price right back up to that level again. So if I see a price get hit more than two times in a pretty short amount of time, I'm not interested. So when we're looking for that third touch, which is actually the first one, it should be way over here. And there should have been a lot of other stuff that's happened since then. And then we're getting our double top formation where we want to take our trade to the downside. Okay? Something like that. Okay, so that's number one with price action. Number two with price action is we're going to actually look within the first top of that double top formation. So if I'm looking at this on, usually it would be my intermediate time frame. So this could be something like a 5-minute time frame if you're a scalper like me, or a 15-minute, depending on the time frames that you trade. It would be your middle time frame. I advocate looking at 3 time frames. Let's look at that first top. So on the intermediate time frame, it looks like this. And what we're going to do is zoom in here on our lower time frame, which is going to be our entry time frame. And up here, usually this should look something more like this, where it's come up and we can see this topping pattern. So I really like to see this kind of topping pattern, as opposed to what I don't want to see is necessarily like this. Not that this is bad, but I have less conviction in this area, because what this topping pattern allows me to do, it allows me to have a little bit more of a zone for my resistance. You could do it off of all 3 of those highs, or a lot of times I'll just do it off these 2, because a lot of times price is going to be reacting to, like this level here, not necessarily the full, the very, very, very top. So a lot of times it's going to be like, you might look at this as the right shoulder, for instance, okay? So those are the 2 price action things. We're going to look for an initial touch of the level way far to the left. Sometimes it's even on a different day. And then we're going to look on our entry time frame that we should see some kind of a topping pattern, something that shows that there's a little bit more of a resistance there. Okay, now let's talk about volume. So let's say we have our level, something like this blue line here, okay? I'll make this brighter for you guys. And as price is approaching this on our entry time frame, okay, at some point, price is going to come into this level, and we want to see usually some form of rejection here, okay? Like you might get a bar with a little bit of a wick like that, okay? This rejection candle should have increased volume down here. So if most of your volume was looking like this, your volume candles, right? I know these are really janky looking volume candles, but when price is rejecting on this bar, really you should see like significant volume on that. What we want to see is that right as price hit into that level, that opposition came in, right? Buyers were trying to break out and the sellers said nope, and they created that rejection. So this candle should generally close underneath your resistance area on very high volume, okay? Because with a lot of these reversal trades, you don't necessarily see a volume push as price starts to decline, right? So as price starts to come down here, like this is not usually where you're going to see your volume on these kind of reversals. You're actually going to see it at the top. You're going to see it on that rejection itself. So as I'm getting ready to load up a trade for this double top, and this is going to be on the second top, right, where I'm going to enter, I want to see high volume as we're rejecting that that level. Okay, lastly, and then we're going to go to today's price action, because we had a really great example of this from today. So lastly, what we're going to see is delta. So on delta, and let me just get rid of all of this stuff. Okay, so on delta, what we're looking at, and if those of you guys that follow my videos, this is going to be no surprise to you. So we get our first top, and then we come up and we get our second top. And very simply, if we were to think of, let's put a line down here. This is the separator for our indicator down here, our cumulative delta indicator. What we want to see is that the delta rose here, came down really hard off of that. And then when it came back up for the second top, that it did not rise as high. Okay? It did not rise as high. So this would be about there. So while we have a sort of equal high here, what we actually have is declining delta. Okay, that's going to give me a lot of confirmation as well when I'm looking at these double top patterns. And then my entry, personally, because I do use delta a lot in my trading, and you'll see this when I go to today's price action, my entry is going to be when we see both price and delta sell off together. Or if we're looking at a double bottom, it would be the opposite. A strong bullish candle with also nice strong buying on the delta. That's what I look for my entry signal. There are a number of other ways you could enter, but that is the way that I enter. So that being said, we're going to go take a look at today's price action and see how one of these trades plays out. Okay, so this is today's price action. So this right here is a 5-minute chart. And let me just go over a little bit of what happened here. So the market opened up. We had a nice strong push to the upside. And then we had a news release that dropped the market down. What I want you to look at here is look at the volume on this bearish candle, okay? Again, this would be what we consider our intermediate time frame. The volume on this bearish candle was actually stronger than the opening candle. That's extremely telling because usually we get the most volume of the day right in the first 5 minutes. So the fact that this 5-minute candle, as we sold off after PMI news today, was larger than the opening candle, to me is very telling. That says the sellers are here, okay? And then my personal choice for the intermediate time frame, I like looking at this 10,000 tick chart. And what I want to point out as well is look at the delta as this occurs. This is the same price action, just looks a little different because it's a tick chart. But look at these lows right here, okay, as we found some support. And look at the corresponding delta. So that would be the bottom of this candle to here. You see how delta is dropping much more than price action is. So that's telling me that the sellers are much more aggressive than the buyers here. So all we really need is a price action setup so that price is sort of confirming what we're seeing in the order flow via the cumulative delta. Okay. So the market sold off, tested VWAP down here, tested this support area, and then is starting to rally back up again. Okay, I just fast forwarded price a little bit so we can get closer to the sort of inflection point that we're looking at. So a couple things that I want to point out here. I'm going to go back to this 10,000 tick chart. First thing is, let's look left. What do we see? Right where this top is here, do we have another area of a top or resistance? Yes, we do. We have that right here. Okay. So that becomes our zone. So we've already had two touches. And if you look at the delta, this is a previous day, but do you see how after this top, look how aggressive the selling came off of that? I mean, we sold off really hard at the end of the day yesterday if you're looking at this delta. So that's telling me that that is a very important inflection point. And then we hit that again and right before the news release at 9:45 and then sold off again and again sold off with pretty strong delta down here. Okay, so we've got that first touch way far to the left. Now we've got the first part of our top and we're approaching here for a double top. Now I was already watching for this. Why? Because as we're approaching this level, right, that's our equal high level. And if we look at the delta, where are we? Again, we're still lower. Okay, so even though the buyers have come back in, they did not come back in as aggressively as the sellers did. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at. Okay, now let's go to our entry time frame. Now I'm going to show you on two different charts here. So this, I'm going to go to a 30-second chart because that's what I was watching on this kind of fast volatility. I like a 30-second chart. And then I'm also going to show you on a 2000 tick chart because I often look at those as well. I bounce around between time and tick charts depending on what's more clear to me. Now, look at this 30-second chart. What do we see? We see our topping pattern. So we've got this high, low, higher low, lower high, and then we break our first lower low. So we've got this nice topping pattern. And notice that my zone touches kind of both of these wicks. It encompasses both of those wicks. Okay. Again, you can see that we're going to be tracking our delta here. And a lot of times what I'll do, so let's look at this high right here. Boom, boom. Whoops. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll drop a line on my delta and I'll say, you know, where am I interested in sort of keeping track of here? Now, if we look at this high here, there wasn't a ton of divergence here. Like it's very, very slight. But if we look at these sort of highs on delta here, we can see it's actually pretty significant. So I'm going to keep an eye on that because that's our actual top, okay? You can see I had a previous line here from earlier in the day when I was trading. So we're going to watch this green line. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter so you can see it more clearly. Okay, so this green line here, that's our sort of our threshold that we're looking for. If as price kind of approaches this, we are well above this green line, I'm not taking this double top. I'm not going to take this as a short trade. But if we stay below this, that's going to keep me open for a short trade. So let's let price play forward a little bit more and let's see what we continue to observe. Okay, I'm just going to pause right here for a moment. So what happened? We came up to this area. One thing I want to note, if we look really closely on our delta, if we really zoom in on this, you'll see that we made this little micro pullback and then a higher high right here. Our first little hint was that did not occur on our delta. Okay, that did not occur at all. I'm going to throw you in a little bonus delta trick here in a second, but notice we wicked up and we got this strong rejection bar, and look at the volume on that rejection bar. And I'm not even sure if this bar is fully closed yet, but it's already higher volume than the last, 20 or so candles here, right? So significantly higher volume. In fact, it's the highest volume we've seen since 9:45, right when that news came out. So that's really telling. So honestly, and then we've got, of course, delta dropping along with this. So it would be perfectly acceptable to enter, I don't know if this bar is closed yet. I just paused the playback, but you could enter on the close of this bar. That would be no problem at all. That would be a perfectly valid entry. I'm going to play forward. I'll show you where I was thinking about entering as I was watching this live. Okay, so just really quickly point out, volume increased to grow on, continued to increase on that bar. If you entered at the close, it would have been more like that. Okay, so that would have been that entry. Now, I want to just show this quickly on the 2000 tick, because on the 2000 tick, there's something else interesting that you see here. And this is an indicator that I have programmed, but you can spot this stuff with your eyes. Notice that this bar, that same bar that we were talking about entering on, engulfed the previous two bullish bars without problem. But if we look at our delta, it actually did not engulf on delta. Now, I know that's usually opposite to a lot of what I talk about with delta, that we want to see that strong selling. But what that actually tells me is that whatever buying was going on up here, the sellers completely absorbed, and then they actually started lowering their offers. So as the buyers were still trying to push through this level, the sellers were not only able to hold the level, but they were able to lower their offers and continue to let price drop even as the buyers were aggressively pushing, right? So I look at that personally. For me, that's a precursor to jumping in the trade. I usually don't jump in just off of that. I then look for price and delta confirmation, because we can see the next candle kind of did the opposite, just not as strong. So let's continue to play through, and I'll show you where I was interested in this trade. Okay, right here. So right here, what did we get? We got this nice, price dropped here. It broke this little microstructure, tried to come back up, got a nice doji, and then again dropped on nice strong delta. So for me, a break of this low here, which that candle just barely ticked, and to stop above that little swing point gives us that little 14 tick stop, 21 tick target. So we're trying to get out here right about 64. That for me is the entry that I would like to take. If we look at this on the 30-second, again, what do we see? And remember what I said, don't expect to see a volume increase as the sellers really begin to push. You're looking for the volume on the rejection, on the last attempt up. And notice this candle that we had all our volume on has the highest wick of this entire thing. Okay, so when I'm looking to enter, it doesn't bother me that if you look at the volume on that last candle, the volume isn't that strong yet, because usually what you're going to see is the sellers will pile in as the move gets underway. What I do want to see here is notice the price action and delta confirmation. Strong selling candle, very strong selling delta. Okay, so let's get this to show up on both charts for us. And we can keep an eye on this 30-second chart so you can see how the volume and the delta and the price interact, sort of all three of those pieces of the puzzle. So as we see, price kind of starts to break out even more through this level. And then we get a nice big strong drop. And remember what I said? So there's our target, nice and easy. Now price is going to continue to go down, but we got our 1.5R. You could have gone for a 2R as well. Actually, a really nice target on this particular trade would have been VWAP. When I saw this happening, to me, it was like almost a guarantee that we were going to tag VWAP again. But what I want to point out is, again, if we waited for volume for our entry trigger, we would have been too late. So we look for high volume while price is still going up, while it's hitting that top. Yes, in this particular example, it also sold off in that same candle, but it doesn't always happen. But usually you'll at least see an upper wick of some sort if it's still a green candle. And then we wait for that price and volume confirmation, which we also happen to get as we made this new lower low and lower high. That gives us a beautiful entry, goes right to our target with a lot of volatility. That's exactly what we're looking at. So just a really quick recap. Again, intermediate time frame. Here's the double top right here, these two touches. But again, there is this third inflection point, okay, way back here. It's not a close. If it were over here, if this were in the pre-market, I likely would have been more hesitant to take this trade. but because it touched way back here, made it a level of interest. Then we saw this touch right before the news, come back up to it. Notice the lower delta, okay, from this high to this high, the delta has dropped. That's exactly what we are looking for. And also delta divergence on the lows certainly helps as well. But in this particular trade, it's the highs that I'm looking at. Right as we're coming into that double top area, I want to see that divergence. Again, on our price action, we see there is a nice topping pattern here, so we can draw a nice zone. Notice price did not get all the way up to this wick, but it did go within this zone. Then what we look for is strong volume on the rejection. And then all we need is an entry. Choose your entry style, but pick one and get really darn good at it. Again, guys, if you found this video helpful, please hit like, please subscribe. It really does help me out. Definitely share a comment. Let me know if you've tried this trade and if it works for you. Let me know if you have other tips that you find also give you a greater edge when trading double tops or double bottoms. And we'll catch you in the next video.